For God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life.
Your key to financial opportunity.
Elsewhere in the country,
Chapter 11, Part 1, A Strange Thing. June 12th, 1985. Selena Journal. Lawyers claim Dunn, Hunter, also victims of vicious remeta. Interior courtroom. The court. Call your first witness. You didn't lend that gun to Mark Walter, did you? No. You didn't lend or loan that gun to Lisa, did you? No. You didn't know Daniel Remeta, so you obviously didn't lend it to him. No. And you checked your house when you got back and it hadn't been broken into, no windows or forced injury of any kind, is that correct? William Dunn nods his head from side to side. Had Lisa been back to the house after she had left for the first part of January? Yes, I believe she was, yes. I was not home. Did you have any reason to believe, sir, that Lisa Dunn took the gun? No. What did you think happened to it, Mr. Dunn? Mr. Brooks. Your Honor, we certainly object to that. I don't think Mr. Dunn has any knowledge of who took that gun. I have no knowledge at all who took that gun. I was 1,400 miles away. The court. Sustained. Miss Hirschberger, what sort of things do you do when you encounter a hitchhiker? Since 1974 now, since you've been specifically doing this. Do you mind if I tell you why I help people? That's fine, ma'am. Matthew 14 says, "Go to the highways and the hedges, and compel them to come in that my house may be full." And Jesus was talking about the marriage after he comes. There's going to be a wedding. And he said at this wedding feast, some people will say, I can't come to the wedding because I have my father to take care of, or I got married and I can't go to the wedding. So he said, I want my house to be full. So go try to bring people in from the highways and the hedges. And I found in the Bible where it says, the streets and the alleys. But I haven't been to the alleys. But it gives me joy. You are doing what you believe to be the Lord's work in contacting these hitchhikers, helping them? Well, I believe Matthew 25 commands it. All right. In Jesus' own words. Let me ask you this. Did you encounter an individual who identified himself as James Hunter Jr.? Yes. Mr. Lewis. For the record, please give the court reporter your name and address. I am Dwayne Perkins, Emporia, Kansas. What do you do for a living, Mr. Perkins? I'm a math instructor and assistant ball coach in Butler County Community College. Currently attending summer school at Emporia, is that correct? Yes, sir. Mr. Perkins, I want to direct your attention back to February the 12th of 1985 at approximately 8:30 a.m. Where were you going at that time, if you can recall? Okay, at that time I was going to school to teach at Butler County. Alright, and what kind of vehicle, were you out on the highway in a vehicle? Yes, I was in my wife's car that day, a Nissan Sentra. What road were you on? I take I-35, take the cutoff into El Dorado. Did you, in the course of driving to school that morning, give a ride to somebody? Yes, I did. A hitchhiker? Yes. And where was he standing when you first saw him, if you recall? He was just off of I-35 on the right-hand side of the road. Did he have any package or luggage with him? He had a duffel bag of some sort. Okay, and he was obviously thumbing a ride? Yes, sir. You stopped and picked him up. And did you have a conversation with him? Yes, I talked to him for a little bit. Please tell the jury what sort of conversation you had with this gentleman. I asked him where he was headed, and he said to Kansas City. And he had said he caught a ride and wanted off in Wichita. He slept through the ride and woke up in McPherson about 3 in the morning before he could get off, and he had a ride on a truck. Nobody else with him? No, sir. How far did you take him? Approximately 30 miles. It's that far to El Dorado. You dropped him off in El Dorado? Yes, at the turnpike there. Now, Mr. Perkins, after these crimes happened out here in Thomas County, did you see this individual's picture on the television or in the newspaper? Yes, it was the following Sunday. I just happened to hear something about the crime, and it was towards the end of the segment on the people who were being held. And I looked up and saw this picture, and I asked my wife, because I didn't hear anything other than, the Colby trials or something, and I said, was there something about a hitchhiker? And she said she had thought that there was a drifter. And I turned to her and I said, I picked that guy up on Tuesday. And you then contacted the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, is that right? Yes, I contacted first Harvey County Sheriff's Office, and then I contacted the Thomas County Sheriff's Office. Wait, is it Thomas County here? Well, whatever they told me to call. And the KBI contacted me. Alright, while you were with Mr. Hunter that morning, sir, did he have a weapon of any kind on him that you could tell? Not that I could tell, no. Did he threaten you in any way? No. That's all I have. The court. Anything with this witness, Mr. Brooks? Mr. Brooks. I have no questions. The court. Mr. Baird? Mr. Baird. Just one quick question, Your Honor. When you picked Mr. Hunter up, the photograph you identified. Yes, sir. Did you place a gun on the dash? Did I place a gun on the dash? No. Have you picked up hitchhikers before? Yes, sir. When you do that, do you repeatedly put your gun on the dash? No, sir. Thank you. No further questions. Mr. Baird. Sir, would you please state your name and occupation for the record? Paul Wagner, oral surgeon from Hays, Kansas. Okay, Mr. Wagner. I would like to direct your attention back to February the 13th of 1985, okay? Okay. On that particular day in the evening hours, somewhere around 4 p.m., were you and your wife going somewhere on I-70? Yes, we were heading for the mountains. For Colorado? Yes. Alright, sir, and while you were driving on I-70, did you have the occasion to see a car similar to that one on I-70? Yes, I certainly did. Alright, would you tell us what it was that attracted your attention to that automobile, Mr. Wagner? The car was in the emergency stopping lane of the interstate and stopped at probably 300 or 400 yards ahead of me when I first noticed the car. We approached a bit closer and pulled out from the stopping lane back onto the right-hand lane of the interstate. And as we passed that area, let me interrupt you, I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir. Well, as they pulled out, we noticed that they had left something there. Dropped it out of the door, which as we passed was a paper bag. And the only thing I saw that rolled out was some beer cans. Alright. And I mentioned to my wife at that time that we needed to be careful of the folks in the car, because they obviously had been drinking. And we wanted to get by them as quickly as we could so that we wouldn't be involved in a situation with them. And did you then go ahead and pass them? Yes. Alright, and as you were passing them, did you have the opportunity to look into the car and see the right front passenger of that automobile? Yes, I certainly did. As I passed and just as we were adjacent to that automobile, the passenger was burning something that was very obvious from where I was sitting. And the flames were 4 to 6 inches high. And he was holding it, it was a very odd sight to me, that anybody would do that within the confines of an automobile. Okay. And I mentioned to my wife once again, well, that's really strange. Strange situation on there, that they would be burning something like that. Okay, and as you were going by them, or maybe had gotten past them a little way, did you have the opportunity to see a patrol car, a sheriff's car go by going east? I certainly did, And this followed. I had my CB radio on at the time, and the truckers were making quite a lot of noise about all the law enforcement people that were in the area. And we heard a transmission on the CB that, to me, that was obviously from a law enforcement person asking the truckers not to reveal their locations. Now, I'm trying to think of a location. Are you familiar with the rest stop that's past Colby here on the way I-70 to Colorado? Yes, I am. Have you passed that area? Yes, I'm sure we had. We were someplace around the Levant exit when this happened. But you hadn't got to the Levant exit yet, is that correct? Not to my knowledge. And you saw a sheriff's car going east, not too long after you passed the car? Yes. Alright, now can you describe any physical features about the individual that you saw on the passenger side front of the automobile burning something that was burning rather brightly? Yes, the outstanding features that I noticed was that he had long dark hair and a long dark beard. Okay, did you after that have the opportunity to see a photograph of an individual in that paper that was identified as James Hunter? Yes, I did. No, I haven't. Never? No. Never saw it on television. We spent a week in Colorado and we did not know about what was going on here until the following morning when I heard a broadcast on the national news network. Okay, and we began to think that we'd seen the individuals involved in this at that time. And not till we read the reports of the description of the car later did we, at the time, that we felt rather certain that we had been right through there and witnessed the individuals. At that time, the individual in the passenger side had a rather bushy beard? Yes, that's correct. Okay, and if you were to see a picture of that individual again, do you think you could identify that person that was seated in the passenger front side of the automobile? I'm very honestly not sure that I could make a positive identification of the individual, other than to give you a description of an individual with longer hair and a longer beard. Okay, did you notice anything about the automobile at the time, the tag or anything else? The only thing I noticed about the automobile was that it was a car that had been wrecked and parts replaced, obviously from a salvage dealership of a different color. Okay, and the individual had a bushy brown dark beard and long hair? That's very correct. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. No further questions. The court. Mr. Lewis? Mr. Lewis. Sir, I didn't hear you very well when you were describing the car that you saw. What did you say it looked like? It looked like a car that had parts replaced on it that had been in an accident. That it had replaced parts from perhaps a similar car of the same make with a different color. Okay, and you've looked at the picture of the car that Mr. Beard showed you just right now? You can't positively identify that that was the car you saw? Not other than the fact that it would be consistent with the appearance of the car that sticks out in my mind from that day. And you can't positively identify who it was that you saw in the front seat? No. Did you see the driver? Fleeting glance at the driver, yes. The only thing that stands out in my mind there is the fact that he was an individual with a very anxious look on his face. Did he have dirty black or brown hair? I really can't be consistent at all about a description of the driver. Did you ever see anybody in the paper that looked like the driver of the vehicle? No. Once again, I don't have a firm description in my mind of that individual. Okay, that I can bring forth at least. Any other people in the front seat? No, not that I saw. Absolutely not that I saw. This vehicle was still out on the interstate when you saw it, right? Yes. And from your testimony, they were littered. They were throwing junk out on the interstate. Not from a moving car, but from a stop position on the emergency stopping area. It was one stack that I saw that had beer cans rolling from it as we passed by. Who threw this out? Well, I have no idea who threw it out. It came out of the open door from the passenger side. It's possible that you may have seen the suspect vehicle and you may have seen an entirely different vehicle. Isn't that right? Well, I guess that's possible. That's all. Mr. Brooks. No questions, Your Honor. The court. Mr. Baird? Mr. Baird. Just one. Anything is possible, isn't it, Doctor? That's true. Are you satisfied in your mind that that's the car you saw? Well, it was one very similar to that if it wasn't that one. Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor. Mr. Baird. Sir, would you please state your name and occupation for the jury? Boyd Tousley. I'm a salesman with Vernon Company. Sir, I'd like to direct your attention back to February the 13th of 1985, okay? Yes. In the evening hours, somewhere around 3:30, 3:20, 3:15, somewhere in there, okay? Yes, sir. Were you on I-70 at that time in your automobile? About 3:30 exactly. Okay, somewhere around that time, sir. Did you have the occasion to see that car? Yes, I did. Okay, can you tell us about where you were at that time? I was probably 2 to 5 miles north of the, North Oakley exit on I-70. Why don't you tell this jury just what happened and where you first saw the car, please? I first saw the car not knowing it was a car at that time, when I pulled on the exit and it was coming toward me at a speed greater than what I was traveling to get on, and I didn't think much about it. I went ahead and pulled on, and probably a mile down the road I looked up in my mirror because I was surprised that they hadn't passed me in the passing lane. And they were behind me, I estimate 300 yards, and I paid no attention to it until, another mile and a half. The car was beside me, passing me about the same speed I was driving at. Could you see the passenger in that car? The passenger, yes. And would you tell this jury whether or not you looked at the passenger, what he was looking? Give us a description of what happened as the car is beside you, sir. As the car got beside me, I turned and looked at the passenger, and the passenger was staring at me. And we looked at each other for 5 seconds or 10. He actually stared me down, and I turned back and looked at the road. And they proceeded on around me, and I want to say cut me off short, but maybe 2 car lengths past me, cut back in, and went on down the road. Alright, sir, do you think you'd be able to recognize a picture of the individual that was sitting in the passenger of that car? Yes, I would. That's State's Exhibit number 4 for the record. That's been identified as the car that contained Lisa Dunn, James Hunter, Daniel Rometta, and Mark Walter. Do you think you'd be able to do that? Yes, I would. I'd like to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit number 7, and I'd ask you whether or not you can identify that person. Yes, I can. Let the record reflect, and for the jury, State's Exhibit number 7 is a photograph of James C. Hunter that has been identified and so introduced. So that was the person that was sitting in the passenger side of that automobile? The passenger side, yes, sir. And he's the one that was staring at you. Yes, sir. Could you see what he was doing? He was holding the regular Coors beer. Not actually drinking it, but holding it up very obvious where I could see it. And was staring at you? Yes, sir. Is there any doubt in your mind, sir? No, sir. Thank you very much. No further questions. Oh, I should just clarify. Can you identify anybody else in that car? No, sir. Did you look at anybody else, really, to speak of, other than the guy that was staring at you? Not particularly, no. I noticed, there of course had to be somebody driving it. Thank you, sir. No further questions. Mr. Lewis. Please may we approach the bench, Mr. Baird? Mr. Lewis. I've never heard of this witness before, Your Honor. I have nothing in my file that's indicated to me that he even existed. We've been told there's been an open file policy. Mr. Brooks. Is he even endorsed? Mr. Lewis. I have no statement. If there's been a statement obtained from this witness, we haven't been given it. I don't think that he's even endorsed on the information of the complaint. Mr. Baird. This is rebuttal. He doesn't have to be endorsed as it relates to the statements. I don't know whether you got one or not, Those things were released. The file was there, I assume. Mr. Lewis. I have never heard of this witness before in my life, and I have no statement on him. His testimony was very prejudicial. It should have been disclosed to us. I would simply move the court for a mistrial at this time on behalf of the defendant, Hunter, because of the surprise and the deceit on the part of the prosecution of not providing us with any information about this person. I don't know if Mr. Brooks has ever heard of him before. Mr. Brooks. I have no knowledge of Mr. Tusley either, Your Honor. And we'd ask, because of the surprise and the failure to comply with the discovery request, that his testimony be stricken, or in the alternative, a mistrial in this matter. Mr. Baird, do you know whether or not you ever sent a copy of this report to Tom Jones over here? Did you ever have it? Mr. Murray, I sent him everything I had. Mr. Lewis, I have never heard of this man. I have a statement from Dilbert Tusley, who is a meter reader in Levant. Mr. Murray, there's 2 Tusleys. Mr. Lewis, that's the only Tusley I've ever heard of. Mr. Murray, we can provide him with a report as far as that goes. Mr. Lewis, well, the testimony is in, so I would add to my motion. The court, isn't it my understanding that the statements are not required to be turned over till after the witness testifies? Mr. Murray, that's correct, Your Honor. The court, isn't it the law of the state of Kansas? Mr. Murray, yes. Mr. Lewis, well, we were told, Your Honor, that they were giving us all the information. Mr. Baird, well, we had an open file policy. There's never been an intention on our part to deceive you in any way, shape, or form. I assume that you had that, but I agree with the judge that this, in terms of endorsement, I thought there might be some consideration as endorsements. But it's a rebuttal witness, and rebuttal witnesses do not need to be endorsed. That's the purpose of the rebuttal. Mr. Lewis, well, Mr. Baird, well, we copied volumes of stuff and sent it. I didn't know it was going to happen. I wouldn't have known a witness. Mr. Lewis, I've never heard of him before. The court, well, your motion for mistrial will be denied, and the motion to strike will be denied. Mr. Lewis, I'll go ahead, just a couple of questions. The court, all right. Mr. Lewis, Mr. Tusley, you live here in Colby? Yes, sir. What do you do? I'm a salesman for Vernon Company. Okay, and you came in, did you come into the sheriff and offer this information to help him? No, sir. How were you contacted? He called me by phone and said that he had understood that I had seen the vehicle on the road, and I told him that I had. You came in then, and you gave him a statement on 2/21/85? Well, he had another officer come to my house. Okay, and he took the statement. But it would have been on the 21st? It would have been, several days afterwards on the evening. I'm assuming 9 or thereabouts. And of course, this point in time, you had seen the pictures of this individual in the newspaper? On the television, had you not, sir? Yes, I had. All right, that's all I have. The court. Mr. Brooks? Mr. Brooks. No further questions, Your Honor? The court. Anything further, Mr. Baird? Mr. Baird. Just, I pointed out I may have made a mistake. Not a mistake, but not really made it clear. That's the right front passenger side, correct? Yes, sir. Not in the back seat, but the right front. Right in the passenger side, yes. Thank you very much. No further questions. The court. Anything further at this time? Mr. Lewis. Nothing for me, Your Honor. The court. You may step down, sir. Mr. Baird. We call Sheriff's Officer Mr. Ben Albright to the stand, Your Honor. Benjamin Albright takes the stand. Mr. Baird. Sir, would you please state your name and occupation for the record? Benjamin Francis Albright. I am the Undersheriff for Thomas County Sheriff's Department. Were you so employed on February the 13th of 1985? Yes, I was. Were you on duty that day? Yes, sir. Will you tell this court and counsel how you were dressed on that day, sir? I was dressed in complete uniform, as prescribed by the department, in a marked patrol car. Is that indicative of the uniform that you're wearing here in the courtroom today? Yes, sir. On February the 13th of 1985, sir, did you have the occasion to be wounded in the line of duty? Yes, sir. Do you have any idea approximately what time that took place, sir? Shortly after 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Can you tell us what led to that, sir? Did you have the occasion to stop an automobile? Yes, I did. And where was that automobile stopped at? At the Levant interchange on I-70, on the westbound ramp. What happened when you stopped the automobile, sir? As I stopped the vehicle, the passenger side door opened. I instructed the occupants of the car to shut the door, stay in the vehicle. The door opened again. A subject came out with a gun, fired one shot, came through the windshield of my patrol car. The subject came out and was moving toward me. Another round came through the windshield of the patrol car. I leaned over trying to get some cover behind the dash of the patrol car and was attempting to get my vehicle in reverse when I was struck in the arm with a shot. Just after that, I was struck again in the chest with a bullet. As I was leaning over in the car, I was laying down on the seat on my side. I could look up and see an individual looking at me holding a gun. Let me interrupt you there just a minute, officer. If I understand your testimony correctly, you're telling us that you stopped the automobile and the passenger side door started to open? Right. Okay, sir, I'd like to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit number 2 and ask you whether or not you can identify that photograph. Yes, sir. This is the car that I stopped at the Levant interchange. How do you identify that as being the automobile? Same color, same pattern of red in the back and blue in the front, and the same Michigan license tag. You were cognizant of that at the time you stopped it? Yes, sir. You instructed the passenger of the automobile to shut the door and stay in the car? Yes, sir. Did the door actually ever go completely closed? No, sir. What happened then? Next. Okay, the door paused, and I again gave a command to shut the door. Stay in the vehicle. When the door came open, one of the subject swung out the door with a gun in his hand. Okay, where was he at? All you can tell us, if you can remember those events. Where was he at? Where was he at when the first shot was fired? Standing by his passenger door of this vehicle. Okay, and that shot went where, do you know? It came through the windshield of my patrol car. Is there any doubt in your mind, officer, that that shot was directed towards you? No, sir. Then I think you told us a moment ago that he shot again? Right. Where was he at when the second shot occurred? He was moving still up by his car toward me, making a forward motion. So he was coming toward you at the time? Coming toward me. At the time he fired the second shot? Right. And the second shot, I think you told us, hit the windshield of your automobile? It also came through the windshield. Sir, I'd like to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit number 3 and ask you if you can identify that for me, please. Yes, sir. This is my patrol car issued to me by the Sheriff's Department. Does it depict 2 bullet holes you just told us about, sir? Yes, it does. Does that truly and accurately depict the scene as those 2 shots were fired and as you recall it being on that time? When the shots were fired, my passenger door was closed. Okay, other than that, it's exact. Alright, sir. I think you told us that you went down into the seat behind your dash. Right. And the purpose of that, sir? To get some kind of protection against the shooting. Did you have any doubt, sir, that the second shot was aimed at you? No, sir. And I think you told us, sir, that you were shot, which you felt a bullet hit your body? Right. Okay, where was that first wound or that wound at on your body, sir? In my right forearm. Okay, and you were laying on your right side in the car, sir? Yes, sir. I was leaning over trying to get some cover, with my arm up on the gear shifter trying to get the car in reverse. So it was projected out from your body somewhat. Right. And where did that strike you at, sir, the bullet on your arm? Just about right here in the forearm. Did you see the individual that shot you, sir? Yes, sir. How close was he to you at the time that he shot you in the arm, let's say? Probably as far as feet, probably within 10 to 15 feet. And what about the shot to the chest, sir? I didn't actually see the second shot, but it was immediately after the one that hit me in the arm. Alright, when was it that you noticed the person who had shot you? When did you see and have eye contact? When I was laying down in the seat after I'd been shot. After I had been shot the second time, I could see the individual through my driver's window. I had opened my door when I had initially stopped the other car. What happened to your driver's window after that? Your driver's door's window? What happened, was that up when the shooting started? Yes, it was up. It was up and it was shot out. You told us that you looked up and saw an individual standing there. Did he have a gun? Yes, sir. Where was the gun pointed, sir? At me. And you're laying on your side in the automobile and you've been shot twice. Right. What did you do at that time? I looked at the subject, I could see him, and then I just closed my eyes waiting for another shot. What do you mean, waiting? What are you trying to tell us, officer? I expected the subject to go ahead and empty his gun into me to finish me off. Are you telling us you thought you were dead? Yes, sir. I show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit number 1, sir. Can you identify the person in that photograph? Yes, sir. This is the subject that I saw pointing the gun at me while I was laying down in my patrol car. Okay, is that the subject that shot you? Yes, sir. That person is State's Exhibit number 1? That's a yes? Yes, sir. That's a yes. Officer Albright shakes his head up and down. That's a yes? Yes. Officer, did he shoot you again? No, sir. You mean while I was laying down in the car? While you were laying there and closed your eyes? No, sir. What happened then? I waited a few minutes expecting to be shot again. When nothing happened, I raised up and peeked over the dash of my car and saw this vehicle, the suspect vehicle. It was at the bottom of the off-ramp making a right-hand turn toward Colby or Levant. Okay, the person who shot you that day, is he in the courtroom here today? Yes, he is. Can you tell us where he's seated, please? He's seated at the table right behind you. Can you be descriptive as to his clothes, sir? He's wearing a white shirt, blue tie, brown hair, brown mustache, gray pants, and black shoes. Does he look today as he looked in State's Exhibit number 1, sir? With the exception of his beard has been shaved off, his hair has been neatly trimmed. Yes, he does. Are you sure of your identification? Yes, sir. Will you ever forget that face, officer? No, sir. No further questions. The court. Mr. Lewis? Mr. Lewis. You only saw that face, officer, after the first shot was fired. You didn't see that face again, did you? Correct. That's all. Until the 4th when I was laying down. The court. Do you have any other questions? Mr. Lewis. Just a minute. You did see it on the 4th shot? Is that your testimony? No. After the 4th shot, I was laying down in the car. I could look up and see the individual. Walking back to the vehicle? No, sir. He was just standing there looking at me. Looking at you? Yes. And had every opportunity to kill you, didn't he? Yes, sir. That's all I have? Doctor, were you working on February the 13th of 1985? Yes. And do you know an individual by the name of Ben Albright? Yes, sir. Did you have an occasion to operate on him on February the 13th, 1985? Yes, I did. Did you remove any foreign objects from his body, sir? Not on February 13th, no. We did that on February 14th. Okay, sir. When you took those from him, they were bullets, I assume. They were lead slugs, yes. Looked like bullets, yes. Can you kind of briefly tell us what you did? You took them out of him. What did you do with them? We removed one from his chest first, and I brought that over and we dropped it in a sterile tube. Okay, then after completing that, we worked on Ben's arm and took that bullet out of the arm. Mr. Baird. Sir, would you please state your name and occupation for the record? William Maurice Christie. I'm the manager at the Levant Elevator, Levant, Kansas. Bartlett Grain. How long have you been a manager of the elevator, sir? 7 years. Is that located here in Thomas County? Yes. Can you tell me, sir, how far your elevator is away from the I-70 Levant off-ramp? It's approximately 1 mile. Now I'd like to direct your attention back to February the 13th of 1985. Were you working on that day, sir? Yes, sir. Tell me the first thing you noticed, if anything, when you looked out the window and saw the car sitting there. Did you see anybody in it? The first thing I noticed was the girl under the driver's wheel. That's the first thing I saw. The car was actually sitting still when I saw it. She was behind the steering wheel? Yes. Okay, do you know whether or not she ever saw you, Mr. Christie? Yes, I'm sure she did, because she turned and was looking directly at me. Okay. And I was looking at her, I think it was, I know it was roughly 4 to 5 seconds. What did she do then, if anything? Well, she looked like she was talking to me or talking to someone, and then she turned to the right, and that's all I really saw of her face, after that. What, if anything, was the next thing that happened then after she turned to the right? The next thing I remember was there was 2 males got out. One was on the other side of the car. Are you capable of telling us how they were dressed or what they looked like at the time? I can tell you what they look like. I don't know how they were dressed. Alright, can you tell us what you can about it? The fellow on the south of he was on the east side of the pickup, on the south end of the pickup. He was dark-headed with a black beard and I thought a dark cowboy hat. Okay, and what about the other gentleman? He was to the north of this fellow and he was dark-headed, and that's about all I can tell you about it. Each one of them had a gun? Yes, a total of 2. 2 guns. 2 guns. Okay. And the next thing I saw or remember was Rick Schrader was coming. I guess he came from the elevator. He was there all of a sudden, and the fellow with the beard cowboy hat, was shaking a gun up under his face, Rick would do this back, and then I noticed him motioning, with the gun. And Rick Schrader jumped into the pickup. He just put his hands on the side and leapt over into the pickup. The way he was motioning with that gun, was it towards the truck? Yes, he was pointing it towards the truck. Okay. I assumed he was trying to make him get in, which he did. Alright, and then? The next thing was the Sandman went to the south end of the truck, and this was where Glenn Moore was standing. He was there. And he laid a left hand on his shoulder, and he had the gun in his right hand, and at that point, that's all I saw out there at the time. Okay, and where did you go then, Mr. Christie? Well, I turned and went and locked the scale house door, and then I went into my office and started to look up the number to call the sheriff. Because of what was going on out there? Right. What's the next thing you remember happening to you, Mr. Christie? Well, I had a little trouble looking up his number, and I just got the number looked up, and do you need a glass of water? Yeah, I just got the number looked up, and the north office glass flew out. What do you mean by flew out? Well, the glass flew out, on the floor, and I thought I heard a shot at the time. I don't know. I thought I did. And let's see. Then I picked up the telephone, and I was starting to dial, and then the south window of my office, I heard the shot flew out, and some glass flew inside, and it whirled me around. Did you know where you were shot, Mr. Christie? Well, I felt something on my shoulder, and back at that time, it could have been, I didn't know if I was shot or a piece of glass or what it was, at the time. Alright, go ahead and have a drink. When it spun around you like that, did it spin around you towards the window? Yes. What did you see, if anything? I whirled around and saw the fellow in the window with the gun pointed at me, Okay, and I thought he was trying to shoot again, I don't know. But at the time, I either fell or jumped behind the front of the desk. Fell or dropped behind the desk? Yeah, in front of my desk, Okay, what was the distance from you to the guy that was holding the gun out there that had shot through the window? Well, I would say 5 feet. Did you get a good look at his face? Yes, sir, I did. Mr. Christie, if you need to stand up and look around, feel free to do that. But do you see the individual that was standing on the other side of the window with the gun that shot you today in the courtroom here? Yes, right there. Would you identify him for the record and for the court, what he's wearing? He's wearing white sneakers and dungarees and a red and white sweater. Thank you, Mr. Christie. Any doubt in your mind that's the man that shot you that day? No, sir. Mr. Christie, I also want you to look around and tell us whether or not you see the person in the courtroom today that had the gun on Rick Schrader and forced him into the back of the truck. Do you see him in the courtroom today? Right back there. Would you tell us how he's dressed, please? He's got a blue coat and a black mustache and a black tie. Does he look any different today than he did on the day that you saw him out there and the gun on Rick Schrader? Yes, he does. What's the difference? Well, that day he had a cowboy hat and a black beard and quite a lot longer hair. Any doubt that that's still the person that you saw that day? No. Please let the record reflect he's identified the defendant, Remetta, and the defendant, Hunter. The court nods head up and down. Mr. Christie, what, if anything, did you do, or what happened next, if you will, after you fell in front of your desk there? Well, I was there for a little while, and I felt blood coming up my mouth, I knew I had to do something. So I got up and walked out of my office into the scale house part of where the scale beam was in the south part. And I looked through the window, the south window, and I saw this pickup that we're talking about. Glenn Moore's? Yes, Glenn Moore's. Where did you see that at? What was happening? Well, when I saw it, it was just pulling out of the south drive and pulling out onto the blacktop. It was just heading onto the blacktop. When you felt the blood coming up, when you were laying on the ground, did you know you were bleeding internally, Mr. Christie? Well, I knew I knew at the time I'd been hit pretty hard because blood was coming out of my mouth and I was choking. And you knew for sure then you'd been shot? Yes. The court. Raise your right hand and be sworn, please. Fred Sager, called as a witness on behalf of the state, is duly sworn. The court. Please take the stand. Mr. Baird. Sir, would you please state your name and occupation for the jury here? Fred Sager, Assistant Manager of Bartlett & Company at Levant. How long have you been employed out there, Mr. Sager? 3 years. Where do you live at? Colby. You're at Colby, Thomas County? Colby, Thomas County. Is Levant in Thomas County? Yes. And on February 13th, around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, where were you at in relation to the elevator? Where were you at in the business, do you recall? I would have been in the office. I just come into the office. On that particular day, do you recall whether or not there were any unusual events that happened on that day around that time? Very unusual, yes. Would you tell us, sir, starting around 4 o'clock or the best you can, put the time, what was it that happened that you feel was unusual? Well, this right here was unusual. Well, I just happened to glance out the northeast window, and I used to own a 72 Nova type car. So the back of this car, I saw it and I knew it was a car like that. It had a faded red back fender to it, and I just knew it was the type because of the car I used to own. Did you see it drive in? Yes, it drove in. And I just thought it was friends of Glenmore's at the time. Okay, and you had some people working out there on the elevator for you that day, did you? Uh-huh. Who was it you had working out there? Glenmore's crew. Would Glenmore himself have been out there? Yes. Did you know him? Yes, I did. Do you know any of his crew that was working out there that day? There would have been Raymond Harimza and Wesley Moore. His son? Right. Okay, you thought the car that drove in may be a friend of the Moores, Wesley? Seconds later, I didn't think that. But yeah, at the time, right. You say seconds later. What happened just seconds later? No, more than 10 seconds later. Or real quick. Maurice was standing there and he said, Fred, those guys, we're in trouble. Those guys got guns. Mr. Brooks. So as far as these reports go then, Mr. Sager, you're telling me that if in Mr. Bletch's report, he makes no mention of you talking about a long dark blonde or light brown hair, then he just didn't write down what you said? I don't believe I ever said that to him, no, I really don't. Okay, then in Mr. Murray's report, he didn't write down that you saw someone with dark blonde, light brown hair? Then he simply didn't write that down what you said? No, I didn't. Mr. Baird. Objection, Your Honor. That's not correct. As a matter of fact, Mr. Brooks just questioned him about it. Another subject behind the car with a gun described as having dark blonde or brown hair wearing a light green jacket. Mr. Brooks. Do we see the word long? Mr. Baird. Strike that. I withdraw my objection. You didn't say long. Mr. Brooks. Excuse me, Your Honor. It's not appropriate. We should listen to you. The objection. The court. Go ahead. Mr. Brooks. Excuse me, Your Honor. Let's just read that sentence back Mr. Murray wrote down from his synopsis of what you told him. This is not a word-for-word report, right? No. It's only a paragraph and a half long, and you talked to them for how long? I really don't know how long. Okay, well, he wrote down that you stated, another subject behind the car with the gun was described as having dark blonde or brown hair wearing a light green jacket and shorter than Rick. I'm sure that I would have said long. I'm sure I would have. Would you have said light green jacket? Is that right? I do believe that I said green, but I don't know about light green jacket, but I'm pretty sure I said green. Okay, you also state right here in this same sentence that you saw the subject behind the car. Would that be correct? Well, they're all on the east side of the pickup, not behind the car that they came in. No, I didn't see anything of the car. So you wouldn't have told him that you saw this subject behind the car? No. No further questions, Your Honor. The court. Anything further, Mr. Lewis? Mr. Lewis. Mr. Sager, during the 30 and 45 seconds, minute, however long these people were at your elevator, but during that period of time you have testified you ultimately saw 3 different people holding guns in their hands? Yes. Okay, did you ever see these 3 people in the same place at the same time? No. Okay, I saw 2 of them. Okay, so you saw 2 of them. I know the other 2 were there because somebody was lifting up Glenmore. Uh-huh. And Remetta was talking to somebody in the cab area. And then you saw the 3rd subject with the gun. Did Remetta still have a gun? Did you still see him with his gun when you saw this, the 3rd person with a gun? Who's the 3rd person? Well, I don't know who you saw. You tell me. You tell me you saw 3 people that had guns in their hands. Who are you numbering off? 1, 2, 3. Well, we've got Mr. Remetta, okay? Right. And I believe you testified that there was a bearded individual that had a gun? Right. Is that right? Fred Sager nods his head up and down. And then there's a blonde-headed person that had a gun? Uh-huh. Okay, when you saw the blonde-headed person with the gun, where was Mr. Remetta? He was at the southwest corner of the grain dryer. Was that blonde-headed person in full view of Mr. Remetta? Oh yeah. Okay, he was. When you saw that blonde-headed person with the gun, what happened? Where was the bearded person? He was either in the cab area or lifting up Glenmore, one of the 2. Well, you didn't see him do either one, did you? No, I didn't. Okay, as a matter of fact, when you saw the blonde-headed person with the gun, you did not see the bearded person anywhere, isn't that true? At that time. Okay, that's all I wanted to know, is at the time you saw the blonde-headed person with a gun, the bearded person was nowhere to be seen. I couldn't see him in sight, no. Okay, that's all I wanted to know is what you saw. Now, did you tell Special Agent Blecha that you saw 2 people get out of the vehicle from the passenger side of the car with handguns in their hands? No, I did not. Well, Mr. Blecha, if that's in his report, he just simply is mistaken as to what you told him. That's true. Did you tell Special Agent Murray that the bearded suspect had a gun in his hand? I doubt it. Did you tell Special Agent Blecha that this bearded person had a gun? I really don't know. I don't know if I ever really got into details with those guys. Okay, what color coat, shirt, jacket did this bearded person have on, if you recall? I don't have any idea. Did you see, you do specifically recall what Rometta was wearing, do you not? At least dark clothes? No, I just thought it was dark clothes is all. And the blonde-headed person was wearing a light green jacket? No, I thought everybody out there was pretty dark. Okay, so Special Agent Murray has you describing a blonde-headed person wearing a light green jacket. That's not what you saw. I told him it was green, and I'm sure I did. But I'm not sure of any clothing. Okay, that's all, Your Honor. Mr. Baird. No further questions, Your Honor. The court. You may step down. Mr. Brooks, would you please state your name and address for the court? Robert E. Blecha, Kansas. Okay, and what is your occupation? Special Agent, Kansas Bureau of Investigation. Okay, have you been through any schooling or anything? Well, I've been through agent school that's put on for new agents when they join the Bureau, plus additional schooling since, including 40 hours of training each year that's required. Is part of the training instruction on how to interview people investigating crimes? Yes, sir. And have you had experience in interviewing people investigating crimes in your field? Yes, sir, I have. Okay, is there any way you could tell us how many witnesses you have interviewed? I would have no way of guessing. It's been consistent for the last 18 years. Okay, are we talking about 100 or 1,000? Well, far more than 100, at least. Okay, and can you give the jury a description of the procedure that you have been taught and that you employ in the taking of statements? The procedure that we use for interviewing witnesses and suspects vary somewhat, depending on the cases and depending on the agents that we all have our own, if you will, method of doing interviews. However, in a case where witnesses are interviewed, we let the witnesses tell us their story, and then we go through it with them for details and so forth, always with special emphasis on not putting words in the witness's mouth. Can you elaborate a little bit on not putting words in the witness's mouth? What are you trying to tell us, not putting words in the witness's mouth? Well, as an example, if you ask a witness a question like, didn't the bald-headed man pull the trigger, just as an example, and in that report you would be putting the words. And a lot of time witnesses, if they are close to a case, they will say what they think you want them to say. Okay, did you interview witnesses in this case? Did you not? Yes, I did. Okay, were you called out immediately or when after the incident? I was put on by our Topeka office shortly after the incident occurred. Okay, and from your recollection, can you tell the jury when you started interviewing people? My first interview would have been conducted at approximately 8:40 p.m. on the night of the 13th of February of this year. Okay, and did you, during the course of those interviews, have a chance to interview a man by the name of Raymond Charles Harimza? Raymond Charles Harimza? Yes, sir, I would have. Okay, do you have a report that you generated from this interview with you? Yes, sir, I do. Yes, sir, this is a typed copy of the interview, Mr. Harimza. Now, that's not word for word of what he told you, is it? No, sir. Okay, you generated that from what? The information that's contained in the interview, and any witnesses, that's taken from the field notes that I take during the interview. After the interview, the report is dictated and the tape recording of the dictation goes to our Topeka office, and there our typists type the report in the form that you see here. Okay, and you knew that you were going to be testifying, did you not? Yes, sir. And you knew what the gist of the testimony was going to be about, did you not? Yes, sir. Alright, you've probably taken time to review your notes and review that statement, have you not? Yes, sir, I have. Do they coincide? Yes, sir, they do. Okay, are there any differences that you note there as far as colors, hair, or anything else? No, sir. Okay, have you had an opportunity to review the testimony that Mr. Harimza gave here today? Or not today, the other day? Did you get to watch the videotape of his testimony? Yes, sir, I did last night. Did you see any differences in the testimony on the stand as compared to his statement? If I remember correctly, there were a few distinct differences. Okay, do you remember what those were? If I remember correctly, it has to do with the occupants of the vehicle. Okay, when you watched the videotape of the testimony, did he tell the jury who he thought, or did he describe the person he thought was driving the pickup? If I remember correctly from the video, the testimony had to do with the color of the hair and the light brown or brown long hair of the driver of the vehicle. Did you ask Mr. Harimza at your interview to describe the person driving the pickup? The questions were asked to describe the occupants of the vehicle, including the driver, so yes. Did he describe that person for you? No, sir. What did he tell you that he knew about the driver? I received no information about the driver at that time. Okay, but you're sure in your mind that you asked him to describe the driver for you? Yes, sir. That would be part of the interview procedure. Okay, now during the course of your interviews, did you get to interview a Dennis R. Tubbs? Yes, sir. Okay, and did you go through the same interview procedure with Mr. Tubbs that you described? Yes, sir. Did you ask him about identifications of parties at the elevator? Yes, sir. That's what he had knowledge of, was the elevator scene, is that correct? Yes, sir, that's correct. And did you ask him about the occupants of the vehicle, the pickup? Yes, sir, I did. Okay, and did you ask him about the driver description or anything else? The same questions would have been asked about the descriptions of the drivers or the occupants of the vehicle. Did he describe the driver for you? No, sir. And again, he didn't give you any description at all? No, sir. He didn't describe the hair or anything? No, sir, he did not. Okay, have you had a chance to review his videotape testimony? Yes, sir, I did. Okay, did it differ from what he told you that day concerning the driver? Just a little bit, yes. Okay, can you point out for the jury what the differences are? The differences that I remember was in the reference to a voice that was overheard making a statement. Get in the back, punk. Okay, and did you ask him about the voices that day? Yes, sir, I did. And what did you ask him about that? I asked him if he could distinguish between the voices that were talking, that he had told me about, whether he could tell whether they were male or female. And what did he tell you? He said that there was numerous voices at the same time and he could not distinguish. And in his words, he said that someone said, "Get in the back, punk." And do you have the report that you drafted up concerning Mr. Tubbs? Yes, sir. This would be a copy of a typed interview with Mr. Tubbs as taken from dictation, prepared by myself from field notes. Okay, have you had an opportunity to compare that statement to your field notes? Yes, sir. Are there differences? No, sir. So in other words, you believe that statement, typed statement, contains what Mr. Tubbs told you that day? Yes, sir. Okay, again, it's not word for word what Mr. Tubbs said. No, sir, it's not. On that same date, did you have the occasion to interview Fred Sager? Yes, sir, I did. Okay, and can you tell the court what time you interviewed him? I interviewed Mr. Sager at 1:25 p.m. on the 14th of February of this year. Okay, and did you go through the same interview proceedings with Mr. Sager that you've described here? Yes, sir, I did. Okay, and did you pay any attention to the details concerning this matter? Yes, sir. Did you ask him about who he recognized or saw there that day? Yes, sir, I did. Okay, have you had a chance to review his videotape testimony? Yes, sir. Okay, were there any differences? Yes, sir, there was. Okay, can you remember those differences? If I remember correctly, there was a difference on the location of the two individuals that got out of the passenger car. There was also a difference in I believe it was a description, plus there was a difference on which people had a handgun or possession of a handgun at that time. He said he saw two individuals get out of the passenger side of the passenger car, and he saw them in this general area. Did he ever tell you that he saw anybody on the east side of this pickup? No, sir. And how many people did he tell you that he saw that day? He saw 3 individuals that he described to me. Did you ask him whether he saw males or females out there? Yes, sir. And what did he tell you? He described 3 individuals, all 3 as being white males. The first individual was described as a white male, 6'1" to 6'2", with long dark hair, possibly wearing a dark blue shirt and a jacket. The second subject he described was also a white male. No further description because he saw the back of the vehicle, he saw the back of the person. The third subject was described as a white male with long hair and a beard. He didn't describe any females to you? No, sir. Did he describe anyone from what you just read there? Did he say anybody had long, dark blonde hair? No, sir. Did he describe a person such as that would have had a gun in their hand? No, sir. Now, you didn't take a written statement of Mr. Sager, did you? I did not. Okay, was there one taken? Yes, sir. Okay, do you know when it was taken? I'm not sure when it was taken. It was probably prior to my interview. Okay, and where did you get it? One of the sheriff's deputies gave it to me at the Thomas County Sheriff's Office. Have you got that statement with you? Yes, sir. This would be a written statement signed with the name of Fred Sager. Is it dated? 13th of February, 85. Okay, have you read through that written statement? Yes, I have glanced through it. Yes, sir. Is that a different story than what you have in your notes? It's basically the same. Did he identify any person with long, dark blonde hair in that written statement? I don't believe so, sir. No. Okay, have you had occasion to read that statement? Yes, sir. And you have compared that to your field notes and typed report? Yes, sir. Did they differ? They're basically the same. In that statement, does he identify any female voices? No, sir. In that statement, does he identify or describe in any fashion who is driving the pickup? No, sir. Now, when you finish your interview proceeding with the witness, do you type up a report and then send it back to them for review so they can read it and see what's wrong or right? No, sir, I do not. Okay, is that bureau policy or what? That would be bureau policy. Okay, do they have, is there any way they have any idea what you're going to put up in that report before you put it together? When I interview the witnesses or suspects, either way, after I get through the interview, I go through my field notes, read back to them what they have told me, and ask if there's any additions or corrections to be made, if there's anything that I have left out that they would like to tell me. And did you do that with Mr. Harimza? Yes, sir. I do that with all the people that I interview. Mr. Harimza, Mr. Tubbs, and Mr. Sager? Yes, sir. Did any of those people say that you'd left anything out? They said they couldn't think of anything at the time that had been left out. Did they identify anything that you had stated wrong? No, sir. Okay, we have nothing further at this time, Your Honor. The court. Mr. Lewis? Mr. Lewis. Officer Agent Bletcha, referring back again, you were investigating a kidnapping, 2 homicides, and 2 other people being shot? Yes, sir, that's correct. And what was the purpose of your interview of these witnesses? To find out as much about what happened as you could? Yes, sir, that's correct. All right, and then, sir, referring to your interview with Fred Sager, you indicated on your examination, direct examination by Mr. Brooks, that there is a difference in the testimony Mr. Sager gave in this court and the statement he gave you concerning the identification of suspects with handguns. Is that correct? Yes, sir. At the time you interviewed him, would you please tell this jury who he described as having a gun in their hand? The 2 persons he described as having the 2 handguns would have been the 2 subjects that left the passenger car on the passenger side. And they were described as the first subject as a white male, 6'1", 6'2". He thought he was wearing a dark blue jacket or shirt with long dark hair. The second subject with a handgun was only described as a white male, and all he could see was his back. Alright, did he identify any individual with a beard? Yes, sir, the third person. And this individual did not have a handgun insofar as what Mr. Sager told you? No, sir. That's all I have, thank you. The court. Court will be adjourned. I'm Cory Zimmerman, and this is Spoon River Gothic, Season 2. Death Rides the Highway, a thrill ride fueled by murder and terror.
Death Rides the Highway.